Conversation.
Hey guys, welcome to the Brand Activism panel. We've got a really fun, interesting, diverse crew up here to talk about doing things that matter, making a difference in the world, using business as a force for good, and various shades of that story. Just curious, I mean, from where you guys are at, just to start with a question to the crowd, how many of you guys here are representing a brand in some capacity? All right. And how of you guys do you feel like this conversation of brand activism, is it something that you're involved in some way or thinking about, or where on that spectrum are people landing? You can shout it out.
Oh.
What's that?
Both.
Okay. Cool. Figuring it out in it? In it. Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'll start just introducing myself. My name's Casey Caplowe. I'm one of the founders of a company called Good, which is a media company for people who give a damn. So we have Good Magazine. We started about 10 years ago, and recently this year brought Upworthy into the mix. So we sort of have two pretty awesome titles that cover issues that matter in different ways. Upworthy is very much about sort of, social storytelling and sharing and stories of positive impact and sort of highlights of humanity, and Good is for a long time covered this culture of people and businesses and ideas pushing the world forward. So it's fun to sort of be here and have this conversation about how people are tackling using business and trying to make a difference in the world in a lot of different ways. I think it's cool across this group, as you will meet sort of people who are big companies, new companies, coming at it from the marketing side, coming at it from storytelling, environmental side. So I think it's a really interesting, diverse set of viewpoints here. And so I'll just sort of kick it off and go down the line. We can start with DJ at the end, but if you could just share just a bit about who you are, what you're up to, and I'd also ask, just to put you on the spot, just like if you could distill the company, the brand you work for, and not like what you could do, but the brand essence of it in a few lines, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. So DJ or Dennis Randell. I'm with Mountain Hardwear, global head of marketing for Mountain Hardwear, which is right here in San Francisco. Year and a half in, so I'm relatively new to the team. 25-year-old brand, climbing heritage, lost its way at some point down this path in the last 25 years. Acquired by Columbia about a dozen years ago, and not the reason it lost its way, but just I think it was more sort of market circumstance. So we're back to sort of bringing the soul back to it and sort of getting back to the climbing heritage, climbing roots. And I think it all connects to this conversation and just sort of, finding the relevance, finding sort of what's important to people, that emotional driver that's bigger than the product. And so that's sort of our focus right now.
My name is Cyrus. I'm here representing a sunblock company called Manda that I co-founded. It's a physical mineral-based sunblock, 7 edible ingredients. I almost lost my dad to skin cancer about 5 years ago, and he was Mr. Coppertone Sport, and read some emerging science on endocrine disruptors and potential different cancer-causing substances in the active ingredients of chemical-based sunblock. So decided to come at it with that, but also coming at this wearing different hats. I've been a professional athlete and an activist filmmaker, and I'm also head of media at a founding B corporation called Guayaki Yerba Mate.
Hi, I'm Mishy. I work for REI. I'm a global creative director. And REI is an interesting company in that quietly they have been the purpose-driven, give away 70% of their profits to the outdoor community, but in a very interesting position right now in terms of with retail hurting so much and digital doing so well, kind of feeling like it's time, and they've kind of kept low the story about, a lot of people don't realize that 70% profits are given back. So purpose-driven is what it's written into the bylaws, that's who they are, but realizing now we need to start talking more about that. But they are I keep saying they, I've only been there 6 months, and I've spent my life 20 years working in advertising agencies that were trying to make these things up about our clients, and now it's funny to work for a company that this really is part of their DNA and who they are, but they don't really know how to tell that story and want to do it in a humble way. So it's kind of an interesting time right now to take over this role at REI.
I'm Josh Doyle with Uncharted Supply, and we've been around since January, so we're brand new. We make hats and shirts and backpacks, hoping to get to REI one day. Yeah, I'm excited to be up here, so thanks for having us. We're very socially conscious and want to provide good with our products, and so 10% of our proceeds go to help people overseas. And so my brother and I, who's out in the crowd there, say hello, Tommy. We do some work, and so we want to partner with the locals to help their economy and not hurt them in the process. So that's kind of our heart, and we're trying to create a pipeline so people can see that authenticity, and hopefully we can be a force for good.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm with 1% for the Planet. So as an organization, we're a nonprofit, but I'm sure some folks are familiar with 1% for the Planet as a global movement about giving back to protect the environment. And so actually a large part of what we do is getting businesses and brands to make that commitment to give back at 1% of annual sales. And they give that money directly to environmental nonprofits, and then we actually certify that that giving is happening. And we do a tremendous amount of work with storytelling and actually trying to really create a movement and a brand that is this commitment to give back and protect our planet, and to help brands tell that story in an authentic way with kind of this third-party approval, and to engage customers and employees, for that matter, with just this ethos of, hey, we all have an impact on the planet. Let's do something to give back in a very real and verifiable way. So that's our brand.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So just to jump right into it, I'm curious your perspectives on, why does this matter? Why is it important? Is it important? In what ways is it important that brands are trying to do something other than sell their products? We'll go reverse, so you can jump in.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I came into this role. I'm our California membership manager at 1% for the Planet, from the science side, environmental science actually, and have never worked in advertising or marketing or sales. That's just not my background. And something I've really come to embrace and respect in this role is the power that brands have, right? We live in a capitalist society, we're in a consumer society, and it's, I think, imperative that we start to shift corporate ethos in a way that we just bake in this commitment to giving back and trying to do less harm and do more good. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for brands to simultaneously sell a product, make money, make profit, and actually have a concrete commitment to doing some good. And then I think it's really important to communicate that and actually leverage that on the marketing side, so long as it's authentic and real and not just greenwashing. And so I think that to actually fix some of our major environmental issues, say climate change, we all really have to step up. And I think there's just tons of potential for businesses to actually be driving that commitment, that money, that support to the on-the-ground nonprofits.
That's good. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I think through stories, we've been talking about how powerful stories are. And so as brands, as companies, we can use our voices together, the platforms that we have, through these stories, show the faces of these people, and we can create good through the products we sell. And so I think stories are very important. And I do believe that the platforms that we have can create an avenue for people to be inspired to go out and do good themselves, and also to buy some products that they know where their dollars are going and that they're affecting communities for good.
I think the reason it's important, we're all sitting outdoors right now, and I think people don't realize that, well, we do realize, like, with the public lands being threatened, that if we don't vote with our dollars, then this is all going to go away. And I think that, especially, I mean, I keep bringing it back to, like, the REI, but like the Amazons of the world, like you can buy a tent on Amazon and you can order it right now and you'll get it delivered in 2 hours, or you can buy it from a brand that's actually then going to give back. And every time you buy a tent, it helps build a trail. And I think people have to support the brands that are doing something good for the world. I know a lot of companies say that they're doing, but I think it's incumbent, I think especially now with Trump as president and people feeling like this sense of loss, what can I do? I know a lot of my friends, people I know kind of put their head down and are so overwhelmed, but we can vote with our dollars, and you can buy things from companies and support the companies that are actually doing something from the ground up instead of us before thinking it's going to come from the top down. And that's why I think brand activity, it's so important right now that we then support. It's too easy to go the quick route, and just because you want it conveniently, you want it quickly, but it's worth spending a little bit more money to support the things that are important to us, like the outdoors.
So I'd say we've probably all drank this Kool-Aid, so we're in it. I mean, I fully believe in it, so I'm not disputing it, but I'm curious, maybe for you guys, if you have thoughts on this. So it's important to do this, to take the stand, to sort of find these ways of making an impact in the world. How do you see that relate to the consumers? And maybe you have even a thought on this in terms of if you're competing with Amazon, where does this figure into that relationship with the consumer, and where does it actually work versus stuff people, maybe a small group pays attention to, but a bigger group doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in. The Amazon thing is interesting because Hardwear is just at this place. We were just talking about this, right? So we're just going on Amazon, and it's officially. The reality is everyone's on Amazon, whether you want to be there or not, right? Because it's just it's whack-a-mole with everyone who you sell product. It's going to end up on Amazon anyway. So our approach to this is that we're going to try to get in front of it and try to do it the right way and in an admirable way. I think if you look at the principles of these brands, it's that whole, we all are in agreement here that consumers hold the power. It's better, choices. You take a platform like Tom's and you say, just a smarter mousetrap. You don't have to like the shoes. None of that matters because they did something that changed the paradigm. And you have these buyers at Dillard's that are being told to go out and buy Tom's, but they're not talking about shoes. They're talking about that emotional connection to a product. So as I look at Amazon, if the company's just below that, your product is going to get sold on Amazon, through you, through somebody else. So, if the principles of the company, if the manufacturer, the designers, they have a value set that ultimately will flow through to whatever distribution channel it goes through, it almost kind of doesn't matter, right? So Tom's shoes sold on Amazon still give a pair back. So I think we're in this mode where let's worry less about trying to arm wrestle these giants and think about it in terms of we can control our own brand, we can control the products we make and the values and the principles behind it. We can create platforms that we know are real and then sort of let the world evolve as it will through distribution and just, focus less on that than what you can actually control, I guess.
So Cyrus, with either the sunblock company that you started or your time with Guayaki, how are you seeing the consumers and community that you connect with react to and participate in the story that you guys are pushing?
Yeah, I think that we're dealing with smarter and smarter consumers, and with just mass dissemination of knowledge through the internet, people are seeing through greenwashing, and at some level we're all participating in it because we're a part of a capitalist colonialist system that basically anything, and we're all complicit. And anytime when you degrade natural capital for other forms of capital and you trick an entire society that's okay, and that's what we're all doing, it's all extractive at some level, then you're greenwashing. So I think that's a really good place to start with all this, and like a real humble, like I think that's the level of humility we have to come at all this stuff with, is it's like there's generations of relearning to be able to live on this planet sustainably and hopefully regeneratively, which we're going to need to do if we're going to live here for very long. So I think it's just kind of, for us, it's like embracing that level of humility, looking to Indigenous people not as a token to add into our greenwashing or however you want to call it, but really listening to them and understanding and having those hard conversations, because the nature of this beast is extractive. We are in an extractive economy. So how do we lessen that extraction? How do we really, I think we all look up to what Yvon Chouinard's done at Patagonia, just in the sense that he's this like old curmudgeon guy that's kind of doesn't give a shit anymore, and he's just able to call it out. And whether or not his company follows that, toes that line in varying degrees, whether they do or not, he's willing to say that stuff. And I think that is actually really revolutionary in the sense of, here's somebody who has nothing to lose, they have no spiel to give, and it's kind of coming at it from that angle. So I guess radical humility, and then just trying to look at sourcing, trying to look at efficacy, not trying to hang, because our sunblock, we're going against, mainstream sunblocks. I made a film about industrial agriculture, which led me down a rabbit hole of GMOs, which is a contentious issue, and even pesticides, synthetic pesticides, and on the surface, it's all very black and white, organic, good, and the more I delved into all that stuff, there's so many areas of gray, and there's so many ways in which we can cotton on to this natural or stewardship or even conservation. Conservation in so many ways. There's a great book called Conservation Refugees that the most outspoken indigenous tribes in the world view conservation as their number one threat because of our lack of understanding of literacy of that we can be a force for good on the land. So I don't know, there's a lot of like complicated things, and I think as brands we can just I think there tends to be a lot of like newly found empowerment when we're not a part of the original system that we're born into, and we've like gone to step 1 of 1,000, and it's like, yeah, I'm at step 1, but I think it's just acknowledging that, and I think humor and humility and asking those questions is going to really serve brands, as opposed to flags in the ground, colonizing organics or colonizing activism or colonizing indigenous rights or fair trade. It's like, Voltaire, there's a great Voltaire quote that's, I'm gonna hack it, but to be certain or to be uncertain is uncomfortable. To be certain is absurd, So I think that's what we're trying to do,
It's amazing. I think it gets into, these issues can be huge and overwhelming, and like fighting giant entrenched, centuries-old systems, and 15-year-old companies that are bulldozing through everything. But of course, we're in it. We're on some level optimists, I believe, to do this work. I'd love to hear just some success stories from you guys, like something that you've worked on, that you've done, where whether it was small or large, that you feel like is a great example of this, of brands, companies taking a stand, becoming active, that worked.
Sure. So I guess this is perhaps not a specific example, but actually kind of speaks to the history of 1% for the Planet, as we were founded by Yvon Chouinard back in 2002 with that very just like frank realization that like, holy shit, my business has an impact. My business is my tool for good. Of course, I would give back, right? And I think that what's really cool is 15 years later, when companies actually contact us and say, hey, we want to be business members, what's the next step? At least 50% are saying, I admire Patagonia, or I read Let My People Go Surfing, or some other reference to either Yvon or Patagonia. And I guess my example here is just the power of collective, the power of the collective and the power of the movement. So like, this is obviously a pitch for 1% for the planet, but just like we have so many small little businesses, and if they're giving back 1%, that's like dollars. It's nothing big, but collectively there is a real impact, and I think it's empowering and has this sense of optimism when you can actually be a part of that larger movement for good. So it's really exciting just to hear people be like, okay, I look up to Patagonia and my company might be small, or maybe I haven't even launched yet and I don't have any money, but I want to make this commitment. And I've been inspired by the movement or by some of the larger companies who are a part of the movement. And that's cool, I think.
Are you able to share what that trajectory since 2002 of how it's grown, if there's been spikes or if it's been steady?
Yeah, it's I'm happy to have like a longer conversation too, because it has had some spikes and ups and downs, and I think as an organization we're so small, we've been through various transitions, but we're at about 1,500 members globally right now, and a ton of nonprofit partners throughout the world. And at various points early on, I think we had some larger members that have since transitioned out of the network for various reasons. And certainly since November 2016, we've seen an enormous uptick in businesses contacting us wanting to do something, right? Like post-presidential election. So I think that my sense is that we're actually kind of at a turning point where as a movement, it could really explode for good. But it's been, I would say, consistent growth throughout 15 years, but with some, botched marketing campaigns and other detailed history that I could go into if anyone's really curious. But
Man, for us, it's even on a smaller scale, like what can we do for immediate needs and how can we respond to current events? And so we launched a t-shirt campaign and just went after Harvey, like, hey, Harvey hit. And so we're going to do a limited edition t-shirt campaign. And so we partner with a bunch of local artists and painters. They painted up some stuff for free. And some other people, the people that make the t-shirts, okay, we'll give you the shirts for free, ink for free. We want to help. And so we got to see a bunch of people band together, and we put the shirts up, and they just went really well. I think a lot of people saw that, hey, 100% of the proceeds are going down to help families that were affected by Harvey. And so what's cool about that is we get to actually go down, our team, we get to go down and personally deliver these supplies. With the money, the 100% of the money that goes to the shirts, we get to take that down with us and show people, hey, these are some current needs, and hey, this is on a small scale, but we can at least impact some people. And so that was a success for us. We do a lot of stuff overseas and very much believe that when we go in and help a community, we don't want to hurt them in the process and create dependence on us. When we come in and bring aid, we don't want to create that dependence. So a success for us recently was we went in and did an eyeglass clinic, and we bought the glasses locally from the economy there. We had doctors that were there from the local economy, and we were able to scan people's eyes that weren't able to go out and get a procedure done, and we could scan them, say, hey, we got some free glasses from your local economy here. And then also, if we couldn't do like a major surgery, we would send them to local doctors. So for us, that was a big success, a big win, that we go in, we don't show people, hey, we're going to give you the fish and not a pole. We want to show you that here's a pole, and so here's how you can fish. And so we do other stuff. We're going to dive a little bit more into that. We got a Riverside chat at 3, but that's kind of how we want to do that is go in, not hurt with the efforts. And so to transform communities, we want to make sure that they have the tools to pull themselves out of tough situations.
I'm very aware of, I feel like I am big, I think big behemoth here being REI. But one thing that REI did that I think was awesome was the opt outside campaign, closing doors on Black Friday, and that was and that suggestion came from an employee, sitting around and what could we do? We're a co-op. We believe in getting people outdoors. What if our 12,000 employees, we said, instead of Black Friday, which is this crazy day, let's shut our doors and let everyone go outside with their friends and family. And now, year 3 into that, we're kind of figuring out what can we do year 3? And what blew me away is over 6.5 million people have used the hashtag opt outside. So people are doing it and they're getting outside. And if that's the purpose of if we believe like an outdoor life is a life well lived, let's put our money where our mouth is and get people to go outside. And to me, that just kind of blew me away. That is, so many people have embraced it and are using it and are getting outside.
Yeah, we live in this world where we define ourselves through our purchases. So we have this incredible opportunity with these brands and to make a brand that stands for something more than what is currently. There's a lot of, you can make a huge argument that more activism can be done through capitalists, making brands that live and espouse what people want than almost anything, especially politics these days. There's so many, so much disillusion. I think for our brand, just Guayaki yerba mate. We've pulled traditionally mate it's a tree in the rainforest. It's a leaf. Has caffeine. It has other properties similar to chocolate. Gives a euphoric feeling, and it's typically grown in monocultures, and the trees are grown in the sun because that's the fastest way. And we've grown them in the shade in an ecological footprint that's native to the rainforest and in shade-grown mate. And in that, we use our proceeds to save acres of the Amazon. We've been doing this for 20 years. So we're creating literacy around tribes and ways of life and ecosystems down and providing economy for protection, which is, I think, so huge these days. There's a great podcast called The Rhino Hunter on Studio 360 that talked about how hunting can be used to save wildlife. And again, it's applying economics and economic incentive for things to be saved in a world where everything has a price. So in the sunblock, we feel really good about just creating a product that it's a solution to scientific literature that shows that these chemicals, oxybenzones and other benzones, have a direct effect at very high dilution factors to coral polyps and are killing reefs, and same with our endocrine system. So it's making cool kind of a new paradigm of that next little tiny step towards where we all need to be, and feel good about being a part of that.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting group and dialogue. It's pretty special. Interestingly, Liz is, her world, this whole 1% for the planet was one of the biggest inspirations to me. Chouinard is everyone in this, probably this campground's mentor, right? So take nothing away from all that work, and you still look at holes that exist within that platform, and so you said it's spiked and it's come down, and I think one of the things that came to me when I got to Hardwear is that the big companies were the ones that were the most challenging to keep in that mix. That 1% to those folks it's the 80-20 thing. So that's where all the dollars were. It was the big companies but they couldn't get behind that emotionally as easily as the small brands, right? So just the economics of it. So publicly traded, whatever it was. So our thought, we're starting this campaign this fall called the Impact Initiative, and it was really breaking that whole paradigm down and saying that, what is it that is making them opt out of that situation? And it was the economics for sure. It was the not being able to drive completely. Who are the nonprofits that these proceeds are going to? Should we tell one story? And it's crazy to think how brilliant and beautiful 1% is, and yet there was still people kind of shying away from it. So the thought behind the Impact Initiative for us was to say, this put marketing aside, because we're not building, this isn't a marketing campaign for us. It's this statement that if you have these ambassador programs, and I guess it starts with this idea of different times call for different heroes. So 25 years ago, it made a lot of sense to celebrate athleticism, to sort of strict athleticism, and it seems to make less sense today. It seems like if we could shift those dollars, if you could take, I'll pick on Columbia because they're, a giant, and say that you guys you're spending a lot of money on athletes. but you're not spending money and shining light on people who have this massive influence on protection of the playground, campgrounds like this. So that's what this whole thing is. Topher White, who's across there, with this Rainforest Connection, he's one of our new ambassadors. He's, this one guy, one idea, rigging these cell phones. If you haven't spent any time over there, go check out what he's doing. It's brilliant. I mean, and for us to spend money on an athlete versus somebody like Topher, $20,000 will put a massive number of these cell phone devices into the rainforest that will ultimately give us a chance to storytell and use all these brilliant people that know how to market in this industry and go out there and shine a light on what really makes a difference. And so I think that's the beauty of this industry. I think, this isn't a medical convention. We have dogs at work, and we're in this for all the right reasons, but you can see just from this dialogue that it's this whole collaborative spirit. It's like everyone coming together saying, I'm fascinated by each one of you. I want to get time and talk about this because it's so insane. It's the power of all of this coming together is truly massive because we can influence the consumer. We really can. And it's just, it's pretty brilliant.
I think it's really interesting, much like you said, the different perspectives and places people are coming at it here. And something I'm hearing is just this idea of how I think we each use our sort of special sort of assets really effectively, whether that's realizing that perhaps for REI, of all the impacts made and dollars given, closing the stores is the thing that can send a ripple through the world. Or just hearing sort of your rapid response story of, feeling like you have as a younger startup and being able to be nimble and having those networks, be like, oh man, I have people I can call, we can do something about this right now. I think that's really interesting. And as I think about it, at Good, we end up, we do media primarily, but very significant. We also have a consulting practice where we work with companies and help figure out sort of social good and marketing impact kind of initiatives. And I think figuring out how people use what's really core to them, what assets are at their disposal. It's not just always about throwing money out the door, is a really interesting part of this. And I'm curious just to hear you guys talk about, and maybe Josh, with you first, your brand and thinking of this as brand building. And I don't necessarily mean that just from selling product kind of way, but creating meaning and coherence. And so maybe just a little bit more about your story and what you're hoping to create through the work you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think building a brand is a process, and so we're at the very beginning stage still, but just streamlining our message to just brew that authenticity for the consumers, because let's face it, like we're talking about Amazon, they can go and buy anything they want just by the click of a button, and so when they see these brands, a lot of people can sniff out the inauthenticity. And so what we try to do is really create through stories, and we're not the best at it. We're actually learning very much how not to do it, but we're trying to get our story out so that we can show people, hey, look, we want to do good. We want to inspire you to do good as well. And we're going to inspire you to do good through our efforts, through the stories we tell, and you can come be a part of that too. And so that's the brand we want to build, and we just want to do good. We want to do good and be authentic and show people really the process from the beginning to the end. And so that's kind of how we're geared at Uncharted, is to inspire people through, and we kind of just keep saying adventure with a purpose, and so our whole thing is you can go out and you can adventure, but if you can help people along the way too, that's awesome. And so we do that, and so we hope we can inspire our community through our efforts that you can go out and do both.
And so you've mentioned storytelling a couple times. I'd love to, maybe Cyrus as a filmmaker, how do you think about that and the importance or role of storytelling in this whole conversation?
Yeah, I guess with the advent of social media and things being shareable based on how disruptive is it or how revolutionary is it, I don't know if storytelling, I think it's just a tool for, it polarizes things. Like if the more people gain literacy around video, which is, it's trending so hot right now, it has been for the last arguably like 5 years, it's more, I think the cream is gonna rise to the top, where if you have like a truly paradigm shifting idea that you're implementing through your company, it's gonna get more eyeballs. Whereas if it's kind of, if you're just finding your feet and you want to have these things, but it doesn't seem, I don't know, I think it's just a tool. It's a powerful tool. Like anything, it can be used for, it can be to the detriment of a company. As I think we're all seeing, social media platforms aren't just like, oh, you're so great, you're so great. People are actually starting to Yelp on there now, and I think that's going to become more. So that'll be interesting coming ahead.
Yeah, please.
Coming from an advertising background where every stories used to be told in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. So you could tell a pretty superficial story. But as we were talking about in the advent of the internet, and so people are trained now to watch longer stories, but they have to be off, because now you have more, you could hide a story in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. But now that people will watch for longer, it has to be an authentic story. And people are smarter because they can research it. And I have worked on many campaigns for agencies that were complete bullshit, and that I knew it going in when I was getting briefed on it, but the reason we did it is because we wanted to win an award, or we wanted to get the agency more, and you work on these campaigns, but because it was a quick 30-second spot, you could kind of tell your story really, really quickly. And I think it's a different day and age now, and people are smarter, and I think people can sniff it out, so you have to be authentic and real.
To jump in real quick, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think consumers are getting smarter and kind of demanding more integrity. At the same time, people are busy, and so one of the things that gets us pretty excited at 1% for the Planet is that the 1% for the Planet member logo is authentic, and it's real, and it's so easy to identify as a consumer, and it's almost like that split second window into okay, I know this brand is committed to giving back because their giving is actually certified every year, and I can definitely track down that story and learn about that brand and their commitment and their history. But if I'm on Amazon just trying to buy stuff, it's I think it's really powerful to have that kind of stamp of commitment. And so that's, again, where I get super excited about just the power of collective impacts, the more and more brands who have that commitment and vocalize it through the unified message of 1% for the Planet, that's only helping shift consumer behavior. And so we've got purchase for the planet is our hashtag.
But I totally agree, and I think we are preaching to the choir, as you said. But so then how, and this is our big challenge, how do we communicate this to the rest of the world, this collective good, and that we can make a difference together? And I think that's the big, because everyone is so busy, and Amazon makes it so easy, or other companies. I keep picking on Amazon, because they burned me out over 5 years, so I hate them. But that is the big challenge. How do we get people, we all look very alike. Well, I'm probably older than everyone, but a lot of us we're kind of talking to each other. How do we communicate this to others and the importance to others? And I think that's the big challenge in my world.
Well, if everyone joins 1% for the Planet, our brand will take over the whole universe.
Well, and I think something we were talking about earlier was, what role this plays for consumers, and certainly as the bigger companies here with more probably sophisticated marketing insights. I'm curious your comments on it. It's something we've done a study at Good a year or two ago that was sort of looking into brand goodness, and one of the interesting learnings that we came out of this was that, where this seems to move the needle in consumers is in loyalty more than it is in trial. So showing up as a brand with a great impact story, I don't know, but perhaps even 1% for the Planet may not make someone choose one product next to another for the first time. But as people sort of start to know, oh, that's a brand that that does stuff that matters, it sort of encourages that return to them. So it's been an interesting thing that we've learned, and the other thing that's really been an insight for me in the past couple of years is the role that it plays in employee engagement too, and how certainly in an increasingly competitive market, like keeping good people and getting great work out of people, that's a really powerful part of this equation. Even if it doesn't change your sales at the end of the year, that it makes the people who work for you that much more excited and engaged. There is value in that too. But I'm curious, I don't know, from the Mountain Hardwear perspective, DJ, if you have
Yeah, I
any
mean, I
thoughts.
think being, one of the larger brands, it's different. I mean, you feel this sort of heightened responsibility, I guess, to get it right and to help lead by example. And I think, going back on that idea of why we started this impact initiative, it was that, again, sort of broken model of you can't get people to give that 1%. But could you challenge them to divert dollars to the people that are creating impact? So that's really the principles of it, and I think everything indicates that philosophy is working. I mean, we haven't even launched this thing publicly. We just launched it mildly to the trade, and it's already gained such significant momentum in that it's just so logical. There's nothing revolutionary about it. It's just, again, this kind of collaboration alignment thing. It's not a campaign we want to own. We want to show up at the next OR in Denver and sort of challenge every other brand to put their toe for white in front of the public. Because anytime we shine a light, collectively as an industry, on these people, on your sort of educated, learnings around what's sort of cancer rates would be through traditional use of sunscreen. So it's like all the collective wisdom, I guess, sort of puts products in perspective, I guess is what it is. Because I'm looking at, and this is, I think this drives people crazy where I am at work, because I'm almost inclined to take the product out of the mix altogether and talk about the value set, because I think that's ultimately what people will connect with. And so storytelling to me is just, you don't go out there and create this tribe and then try to sell it to people anymore. It's that these tribes already exist. People know who their friends are. They know what music they listen to. They know what food they like. So don't try to tell them what's cool. Just embrace and sort of show them that you're in line with their value set. And I think it then doesn't have people on their heels. And I think that's that's what's so cool about social to me, and this power of storytelling. And I heard this cool thing at when I was working at Nat Geo, and I'll never forget it. So it was just how much noise there is out there, and how we talk about storytelling, but so this person brought up an example that somebody from Fox, and they said 25 years ago, if you had a TV show at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, your competitive set was 9 o'clock on Friday night, and you would look around and say, who else is showing a show at that time? And then there was TiVo, and so it was everything else on TV is now my competitive set, and that changed the dynamic. Now this show that's on a completely different night is my competitor, and then you kind of fast forward to today, and we all know you have 3 screens going at once. Your kids working on their homework on one screen, they got their phone, they're getting Snapchat over here, and they're watching TV at the same time. So what this guy said is your new competitive set is every piece of content ever created in the history of mankind. So
No pressure.
holy shit, right? So it's that idea of what cuts through for storytelling. I think we all get it. It has to be pure, and I think it also has to be incredibly simple. I think, and that's why to me, we're really focused on taking the product out of the mix. That people. Building a product is not that complex. We walk around outdoor retailer, and we're in the outdoor, top of mountain, alpine, technical. Yeah, okay, yeah, so everyone else is too. Like, look around. And it's all good. There's a lot of good products out there. So I think people in this day and age are looking for that smarter mousetrap. They're looking for the companies who are doing the extra work quietly and not even, celebrating it as much externally, but just quietly doing the right thing. That will come through in time, and then people will vote with their dollars. and it will. And in the end, there's hope with that, with that sort of work.
Yeah, and to echo that, I mean, I think, wouldn't you agree that maybe the age of meteoric growth is like really coming to an end in some ways, where it's people, it's hit a lot of critical mass, and it's about, if you have a disruptive product, then yeah, you're going to be able to get that out there. You're going to be able to get that word out there. But I think there's this startup culture in millennial generation. How many of you guys, there's companies that you work with or have, are under 5 years old? Yeah, so there's a lot of people who are starting out, and I think we have people on my board, my co-founders. There's a couple of them who really want to be wealthy really quickly, and we just did our first round of private funding. We did a Kickstarter that was successful, and then we promised a lot of our investors that we have this new product, or these 2 new products coming out, and I finally got to test them right before we were going to manufacturing. Already got our FDA, paid our $3,000 for FDA SPF certification, and it was too milky. It wasn't a value add for the customer. We weren't creating a tool. We were just creating something else on the market, and I think that's a benchmark that we're trying to strive for. Is if we're going to create all the resources, create a marketing budget, do all these things, like it's got to be something that benefits humanity. And there's been a lot of great talk about 1% for the planet. You guys are amazing, and these certifications that are allowing companies to just put something on their package that emblemizes and makes that simple for them and communicates through greenwashing is super important. Something else that I would like to say is B Corporation, which is also amazing. It hasn't been brought up yet, but how many of you guys have heard of B Corps? About half of you. Say you and I have an idea and we want to change the world, and we make a Kickstarter, we have a product that we're going to test in the marketplace, and we get down the line and we want to grow the company. Well, you do these private raises, and what happens is that they create the board of directors. You guys know this, but now, and written in our bylaws because of the Revlon case in the 90s, fiduciary responsibility to shareholders impedes our growth based on profits, quarterly profits. So you have an idea, and as we know, most of these ideas, they have long-term goals, and a lot of larger companies are handicapped because their structure's already in place. It's hard to lobby that into an existing framework, and taking, basically what B Corporation does is it's a certification not unlike 1% for the planet in that way, but it actually changes the structure of your corporation so that you can write into your bylaws. You do have a triple bottom line where there's social impact, there's environmental impact, and then there's also a joker card or an X factor, or something that you want to have happen. And so what that allows you to do is to not just always be having these board meetings and having it come down from the financial part of your business that, yeah, we would like to do that, but in order to grow, we need to sell fidget spinners, or something that doesn't maybe align with our ethos of when we first started the brand. We were so excited about changing the world. So these are tools for emerging brands, more so than established brands, but established brands can get on board. But I think between 1% for the planet and B Corp, these are really good things in our pockets as entrepreneurs to actually hold ourselves to that crucible as well. They have a lot of literature. This guy likes me. They have handbooks for different kinds of corporations, and it really helps. They've done a lot of work in kind of defining what a socially responsible company is. So I would highly recommend looking into that.
I'll just jump in real quick. I'm so glad you brought up B Corp. We have tons of business members who are B1s, so both. And the way I like to think of it is like, if you're a certified B Corporation, you have reflected internally. So like, what's your carbon footprint? What does your supply chain look like? What are your labor practices? Like how can you as a company be the most responsible that you can be? And then 1% for the planet is like, how do you have that external impact? How do you make yourself super responsible and then do something additional? And so I think they're a perfect combination, totally.
Can I give an example to that? Like, okay, so for a startup, we just got this influx of $250,000 into our business. And because we want to become a B Corporation, and we're looking through the guidebook and the handbook, okay, there's always that question of how does this $250,000 infuse its way into our brand? And there's talk about sponsoring this new athlete or these other kinds of things, and then it comes back to, we look through the guidebook and it's like, okay, Well, another way we can grow is we can start taking observation trips to places to source our own coconut oil. We can better our supply. We can look at thinning our supply of zinc, which the environmental working group defines as something that's mined, and how can we mitigate by something that's grown? Maybe it's a monoculture. Maybe we can grow it in a biodiverse way. But there's all these different ways that we can look at. Okay, how can we create? Or maybe the other question was like, let's create 10 products and have like a SKU and be able to go after REI or something like that. But what if we only had 3 products and we spent twice as long and made sure that those 3 products are better than anything else in the market? And that goes along with the B Corp model. It's just really focusing on what you do well, as opposed to just, we can make anything in China, we can go to Alibaba, and we can market the crap out of it, So those are all, anyway.
And yeah, I mean, I think it just keeps kind of coming back to this. There's just so many different ways to tackle these, the goals. And to sort of, I think, in essence, this is bringing these core purposes to life through the decisions we make as businesses, through the way we show up and engage consumers, the way we source products, the way we, spend our money inside the company and outside the company. And yeah, I mean, I think it sort of just shows that, in the sense, every company needs to figure this out for themselves. And I think that path is what makes a great brand, is what makes a great story, when you start to do that really consistently and to sort of have that coherent point of view. And just thinking about the title of this panel, brand activism, it's that activism is an interesting thing. It's like, it is showing up in public too. It's not just sort of making your own decisions privately, but it's sort of getting out into the mix and trying to assert and push a point of view. So, I mean, we could obviously talk about this endlessly. The time is sort of running short. I want to open it up to any questions that the crowd may have. So, yeah.
Apologies if this isn't not as articulated as I intend, but I wanted to first say that it's been nice to hear you all be really optimistic. I wasn't sure whether you would be, but all of you have been. But I am curious, maybe specifically for the bigger brands like REI, whether you have evidence of demographic shifts in purchases, in customers, because you mentioned a lot that consumers are getting smarter and can spot lack of authenticity, but as an American, I'm worried that that's not true. Certainly in the political climate, that was proven a little painfully, that authenticity can be manipulated and lied, basically. So I'm curious whether you have evidence of demographic shifts, or whether it's really just within the your consumer base already that is growing wider.
So I do have an example. So we did a campaign called Force of Nature, because we realized that women are really underrepresented in the outdoors, and it was a brand campaign. It was like, how can we be a part of this conversation? It's already happening. So we did a lot of research and realized that women really are underrepresented. So did this whole campaign just to kind of, and we made a commitment that for 2017, every piece of communication we put out there will only feature women. And it's bizarre now to be like in these meetings where we're talking about like the catalog, and if there's an awesome photo but a guy is front and center, it's like, that can't be in there. This was not one of the goals when we did this campaign, but the women's sales in stores are up 20%. And that's a pretty big, especially wasn't something we planned for, but it was done in we also donated like $4 million towards to get women outdoors. We did this grant program where women led different organizations that are trying to get women involved in the outdoors, that we would give them money. And so we put over 1,000 different events getting women in the outdoors. And it's been pretty amazing to see that. And it's funny, Google women outdoors, and the images that come up are the most cheeseball, which you wouldn't think, but there are not a lot of, we are really underrepresented. And so it was very cool to see that did have an impact. But it is, you bring up a good question, and we still, trying to figure out how to be, like, how can we have an even bigger impact, but it's little steps, and For All is a big thing that we're pushing for too. How can we get underserved, like get more people outside, get outdoors. And it is a question mark for us. But it was really encouraging to see that like it was breaking through and women were, but one area where we didn't do a good job on, I didn't anticipate is for plus sizing, like a lot of, and that bubbled up really quickly to the surface that a lot of women said, okay, great, I love this, I love your video, I love that you're trying to get, but when I go into an REI store, none of the clothes fit me. So what is pretty cool is now they're doing this huge thing of increasing and having in stock larger sizes, and realizing that there is a need for that and that we never anticipated that. I'm like, well, how should we deal with this? Should we be quiet about it, or should we, and instead decide, no, we really need to embrace this, and let's bring a lot of people whose social media said, love the campaign, but there's nothing in the store for me. Like, will you help us? Like, we'd love to get your advice. So I am optimistic about that, and it was really interesting to see that that really resonated.
Can I just add one thing to that? That's interesting, because when you think about the shifts not always coming through economics but more social, go back to Tom's for a second and say, let me tell a quick story on Tom's, then it'll kind of speak to my point. So I'm at this marketing meeting in New Hampshire, and it's March, and it's 50 degrees out, and there's some slush on the road, and walk into this meeting, and this guy's got a pair of Tom's on. And so, like a lot of people, I had this unconscious sort of flash. The brand worked in that it's got this place in my head now that there's something good that happened. And so it wasn't this conscious, like seeing the face of the kid who got a pair of shoes who didn't have one, but it was this unconscious version of that. So it was kind of like a good for him sort of feeling. So I walk away with that. Later in the meeting, Tom's comes up and we're talking about it, the success of the brand, how quickly it was exploding. And is there anyone here work for Tom's before I insult the company? Okay, so when the product to me is not their best. Let's leave it at that. It's not their best point or trait. It's the new mousetrap. It's that they've created this new paradigm. So this guy in the conversation started saying, Tom's makes this great product and it's so incredible, and I'm like, well, this whole conversation just got a little bit more interesting. So let's dig in on it. So what is it about, the kind of the Chinese slipper that you love? And like, oh no, this shoe is amazing. But there was the power that this guy would defend. I was like, dude, go outside right now and walk in that puddle and tell me that shoe is amazing. So it's not the shoe that's amazing, it's the company that's amazing, it's the platform that's amazing. And that goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier. It's that a lot of times this social change, and sort of the impact that happens socially, and this idea of people raising their own expectations of what products, what responsibility comes with building a product, and how if somebody has raised that bar and others will follow, then good things are happening. And it doesn't always, it's not KPIs, it's not, the economics that happen immediately, but there feels like this cultural shift towards people recognizing the importance of this, and that the consumer has all the power, and these better buying decisions really do. That is where the hopefulness for me comes from, is that it feels like they're sort of stacking on top of each other, and there's this new dynamic out there that if you go out there and you don't talk about anything that you're doing at all, or if you just ignore this whole conversation, that I think ultimately you will fall on your face, because I think the consumer is just expecting more from every product company, and that's a good thing for all of us. So
I'd also add that, there's a thing we have written on the wall at Good, which is a Noam Chomsky quote, that optimism is a strategy. And so I believe deeply in that. You're not going to change things if you don't think you can, even if it's crazy. The other thing is I reflect back just to the moment we're in right now, and you had made that comment, post-November, the influx of inquiries to 1% for the plan, and companies who wanted to figure out if and how to get on board. And I think back to where Good launched in 2006. That was, shortly after Bush had won the second presidency. It was sort of a time, I think, when we were young and figuring out what we wanted to do in our lives, but it was like we were a pushback against a culture or the top of the culture that seemed off of what we felt like the values were. And Tom's emerged at the exact same time. They were in the first issue of Good. The number of like really innovative nonprofits that popped up around that moment, that were, you know, Donors Choose or Kiva, or like ones who went on to like apply technology to nonprofits and like totally change the game in that respect. You know, there was a sort of this amazing social impact, social good, creative outpouring in those like 2000, like pre-economic collapse. And I wouldn't bet against that not happening again. You know, I think the energy that's been ignited right now, and I think as much as anything, the election it changed stuff, but it also just revealed something that was there the whole time, and we were just, you know, those on the other side were like, oh, it's all cool, everything's being taken care of. We can lean back. And I think that now there's a little more energy in the system. So, all right, I think we have to wrap up, sadly, but you guys can find us for further questions. We'll be here. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. And yeah.